Great comment. Great comment. Welcome, Jonathan, to Trinity Radio.
Thank you, Braxton.
I'm Braxton Hunter, and along with me is...
the guy you just said.
Jonathan Pritchett. So glad that you're here, and if you want to have merch like this, you'll have to go check out What Do You Memes shop, because that's what I'm rocking today. Glad you all are here, and I think I've made the Trinity Skycam a part of the broadcast now. You'll see in the bottom right-hand corner if you want to look at the
unlovely Ohio River.
River that has, according to Jonathan, mutative powers.
Yes.
But anyway, here we are. If you don't know, our live stream is always a little bit slowed down. We chat, we banter. We like to banter. We might say something like, hey, Jonathan, what are you doing over there? You being a guy or something?
Playing with myself.
And it's like that. So anyway, here we are. And Jonathan's in charge of show prep for Fridays. So, JP, what you got for me?
Americans like atheists better than Satanists, so that's something. We were looking at a survey.
That explains the thumbnail.
Yes, a survey of 1,000 Americans by YouGov on their various religions, and then broke that down further into denominations, how people view them as either very favorably, neither favorably or unfavorably, not sure, unfavorably, and very unfavorably. So that was interesting. And then we also we're going to look at some Lifeway research about new commitments to Christ and the importance of small groups and the downward spiral that those are going in, kind of a downtrend in participation in those, as well as church volunteering.
Well, really,
things like that.
And then
we're going to take questions, of course.
Yeah, we're going to take questions. So go ahead and put your questions. I can grab them and save them. Sometimes I miss one. Sorry, imperfect person here. But Jonathan, before we begin, the main thing that you just said that I want people to get is we're going to look at how a couple of articles, but one of which sort of gives us the data on how Americans feel in general about these different worldviews, as you said. And that, of course, is pretty interesting. The atheists did beat the Satanists.
They did. And
people like atheists more than Satanists, even though a lot of Satanists are atheists if they're non-theistic.
Yeah, and people like atheists better than Scientologists.
Scientologists were like at the bottom, right?
With the Satanists.
With the Satanists. Satanists were technically...
But the agnostics were viewed more favorably than they. So let's pull up...
okay, let's do it.
A little bit of that. It's slide one, or I guess image one of those articles. I don't know if you have that.
Of course I have everything.
You have everything planned.
I'm like a Walmart, except I'll come to Portland.
Right.
All right, there you go.
So that's the wrong one.
Oh, sorry.
It's we're doing the YouGov headline.
Okay.
Yeah. So Well, why is that?
That's not the right one? Wait, are they done wrong?
They're done wrong.
Bear with us, folks.
That's the Lifeway one.
That's the one you want, right?
Yes, there you go.
It's still not going to work. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Americans' views on 35 religious groups, organizations, and belief systems. A recent YouGov poll explores American attitudes towards 35 religious groups, organizations, belief systems that encompass
I'm making this easier.
the largest shares of Americans, including Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, and among the ones the most Americans view favorably, viewed least Catholicism and Christianity, Catholicism, and what does that say?
Protestantism are among the ones the most Americans view favorably. You're like, I'm catching it from you now.
Yeah.
Viewed less favorably are Satanism and Scientology.
I need to upgrade my readers.
I guess so.
This is having, so Christianity is still,
at the top.
At the top.
Christianity is by far the most highly favored belief system, receiving a net score of plus 34. Protestantism, the next most popular, falls 19 points behind Christianity at plus 15. Now, explain this because, Protestants are Christians, right? So this is like saying Christianity in general, and then it's breaking it down further, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, that's because, as you'll see on the other chart, I believe that the...
So just go ahead and throw it up there.
Yeah, go ahead and throw that one up there. You'll see that Protestantism is like Christianity is kind of an umbrella thing, but then you have Protestantism, which ranks higher than Catholicism, interestingly enough. Catholicism still viewed favorably, right? But I think that's interesting because right under Christianity you have Protestantism, and then you have the Amish. Like, everyone, if you live around here, we have a lot of Amish here. There's a lot of Amish in Pennsylvania. I noticed when I was traveling here recently. And, they've got their good buffets. They've got their furniture stores. They've got all of this wonderful stuff that they, their own culture that they kind of create. But then they share with the rest of us their culture. Mm-hmm. So, most people typically view the Amish as favorable.
Yeah, there's a lady not too far, a few towns over, who used to be Amish, and she will hook you up. Like, she will get you scheduled for a dinner in an Amish lady's house. So you and a few other people can go. She'll sit there and tell you anything you want to know about the Amish and then cook for you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
and then, of course, Judaism and Buddhism are also favored highly, by most. Now, on that chart that you just showed, that is a combination. So in this, I think we linked it in the description, but in this, most people, when they voted on this or where they ranked, the largest percentages went to either, not sure or not sure, but the neither favorable or unfavorable. So that had the widest percentages of all of these, if you look at deeper in the data. So this right here, what you're looking at on the screen, is telling you of the ones that picked very favorably or favorably. That's a combination of that and how much they ranked above each other, and then it kind of cascades from there. And then, of course, it goes down to the other screen where you get into the negative, where the less favorably kind of you start to score in there. And then, of course,
starting to look like my desk.
It starts with or your office in general, unless I clean it, right?
That's right.
I heard you say something about that's kind of the task given to people who occupy the vice president of academic.
I never released that clip.
Oh, did you?
My wife told me it was too mean, so I didn't release it.
But see, this is why you should. Go back to the Garden of Eden, right? Because you listen to.
It's the other way this time, right? I'm being nice because my wife asked me.
Right, because see, I don't have. I thought it was funny. He played me this clip that he says, "Oh, I got to edit it out," but he played me this clip. It was about me.
Well, you were claiming that you clean my office on occasion, and I said, "Yeah, of course
I do."
This is a position that was created in the Middle Ages by seminarians. Then a role for your position, as you know, that because this is a weighty kind of heady position that he's got. you've got to do something to sort of bring down the big head syndrome that he can get. And so, like, yeah, sometimes he comes in here and cleans in my office like that. I mean, I don't feel like I'm above him or anything. I mean, I'm literally above him when he's like on the floor cleaning, but I would never mean like metaphorically. I think of myself as above him. And but look, he's willing to serve like that. I'm willing to serve. I'll get my hands dirty. I mean, not literally dirty like he does when he's cleaning my office.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Yes, vice president and janitor.
Yeah.
But every male that works at Trinity, all of us men, except for you, have a job.
That's my perk.
Yeah. So the only perk you get as president is you don't have to help clean the office.
Oh.
So I mean that's kind of.
And I love that perk. I'm not giving it up.
I know, because you're not not a servant leader like Jesus. We understand.
Not like Jesus. I've got a long way to go, but one day I'll be there. But you're closer. You should feel good about your situation.
I do feel so much more spiritually.
Look at you.
I have never rejected the notion that I am more spiritually and morally you're better.
Okay.
Right. But back to the negative thing, because the negative thing is interesting because.
Well, I wanted to say real quick, Kevin Non-Tradicath, who's actually been making the rounds, I think, on some shows lately with his own YouTube channel, and we like Kevin. But he says, I'm kind of surprised that JW is lower than Islam, but he also said a minute ago something that I want you to speak to again. I asked you already, but like, he's pointing out that like in the same list, you have like Christianity, right? And then Protestantism, and it is treating them as separate thing. Or it's just saying... Well, I mean, in this kind of a list, you could put them because you could say, look, here's how people feel about Christianity
in general,
and then still.
But then when you ask them, but then when you ask them about specific denominations within Christianity, it's addressed in the article.
Jerome, you're here. The clickbait. I mean, it's not really clickbait. I mean, it kind of is, but it got you here, and now you're here.
No,
your
pull up the negative draft. We're going to prove that American people, according to the latest research, American people view atheism, that's the one. View atheism higher, more favorably, even though you're all viewed unfavorably by the people. You are still, you are viewed more favorably than Satanism down there at the bottom. Which Satanists, they're it looks like that they're tied with the Church of Scientology. So the majority of Americans still place atheism above Scientologists and Satanists. But what's weird is we have a lot of people in the Southern Baptist sphere that watch our program. By the way, Catholics are viewed more favorably than Southern Baptists, which kind of makes sense given a lot of the scandal and stuff going on in the SBC. But there was another thing, if you pull that chart back up one more time for me. There was one other thing that I found interesting. The Wiccans are viewed less favorably than atheists. And that makes me happy, right? It really does. It makes me happy to see that atheism is viewed higher than Wicca. Does it not make you happy?
What do you mean when you say it makes me happy? I'd prefer they all be Christians.
But I would prefer people view atheism more. I prefer the result that they're viewed less unfavorably as Wicca, right?
Well,
I'm happy about that.
Well, and there's, here's the thing. You go back to the C.S. Lewis thing. Like, what do I prefer? This is like when Christopher Hitchens asked William Lane Craig, "Would you prefer I be an atheist or a Muslim?" And he's like, "I have no preference. I want you to be a Christian, right?"
Right.
But from an evangelistic point of view, I go back to that C.S. Lewis Christmas article that was uncovered
about it's easier to evangelize.
It's easier to evangelize someone who actually already has supernatural beliefs. Or beliefs that there is a supernatural.
Well, some atheists do have supernatural beliefs.
Oh, yeah, but not most of the ones that we interact with.
I know, but they just lack a... Yeah, but not me, because the reason is I think the world is a different place than it was when C.S. Lewis was writing. Mm-hmm. Because at least atheists, unlike Wiccans, will at least still... See, if you've ever talked to Wiccans, and I've talked to several, not like dozens, but I've talked to several... went to high school with everyone in high school, there's always that little group of girls that watched The Craft and decided that they wanted to be Wiccans or whatever, get into that kind of thing. And they're obnoxious, but as you see more and more Wiccans entering public space, you realize that atheists will at least agree with you. Most atheists, I don't want to say all atheists, but still agree on, let's use reason and logic and critical thinking and all of that. Whereas if you talk to a Wiccan, it's just a big mess of irrational gibberish.
Well, I didn't hear what you just said because I created a poll that says, "Are you an atheist?" Someone had said it'd be nice to know where the live stream stacks up to this thing. Well, I can't put together all these options, but I'm asking here, are you an atheist? If you are, you put yes. If you're not, you put no.
I have an easier time talking to atheists about things than I do Wiccans, because Wiccans are just a mess of, it's like, it would be, they're not clever enough to be postmodernists. They're just spewing nonsense. So that's why that makes me happy that at least atheists are viewed. But of course, agnostics are viewed more favorably than atheists. So maybe there's something to this idea of saying I don't know makes you more palatable to most
Today,
Americans.
We live in a culture where the notion of discovering things through science and empirical stuff like that, the academic world that is focused on the STEM fields and things like that, that's kind of this is kind of the cultural flavor in the West at the moment. And so at least when we think about the institutions and things, and so I would not be surprised to see the average Joe, even if he identifies as a Christian or an agnostic, or let's say he identifies as a Christian, but he's nominally Christian. This is what we're saying, right? Most people. So then I would think that average Joe would hear atheist. Well, I know somebody who claims he's an atheist, or I got a son who's an atheist, or whatever. But then if you said a witch, the average Joe is going to be like, "No, man, we don't do that around here."
Yeah, and I still the United States, even though we talk about churches decline, belief is on the decline, rise of the nuns, all of that stuff is, but yet still Christianity by far viewed most favorably out of all these different types of belief systems. And so whenever you get down, if you're a Christian, about that, just remember that Christianity is still viewed more favorably than other belief systems in the United States. And in fact, outside of Buddhism and Judaism, I think all the other worldviews were viewed less favorably, if they ranked on that chart.
Well, first of all, I want to say, Kevin says, I voted no, even though I do fit the lack-theist definition of the word. That's progress, Kevin. We're making progress, whether it's terminological or actual. We're going to call it a win. But Jonathan.
Yes.
I lost it. Oh, what are the bare essentials to qualify as a Christian?
The bare essentials, I would say, is like the barest of
the
essentials.
Divinity of Christ, the triune nature of God.
Yes. Bodily resurrection.
Right,
and I tied to that the belief of miracles.
Well, okay.
The inspiration, and even if you reject inerrancy, I would still put in
authority of Scripture.
The inspiration and authority of Scripture. Okay. Well, the inspiration too.
Yeah, this is in whatever sense.
Now you can make a doctrine of God argument that inspiration entails inerrancy, but I'm just saying at minimum, bare essential, I'd say that you'd have to believe that Scripture is inspired and inerrant. Inspired and authoritative, even if you reject inerrancy. I think that those two would be foundational. And I know like the fundamentalists would throw in the virgin birth, but you can get most of that except for a clear statement of Scripture from like the Apostles' Creed, right? But I think that if you were to survey the formulation of those creeds, whether it's the Apostles' Nicene or the Athanasian Creed, they would have a high view of Scripture.
Well, let's pause for a minute, because someone did ask a question a moment ago that I do want to address. Is we actually have a video from way back on weird cults. If you look up Trinity Radio and weird cults, you will come up with a list of very, very small participated in small numbers cults. But I think somewhere in that, maybe the beginning or the end, we talk about the two, a couple of kinds of Satanism. There's theistic Satanism, and at the time that I looked up the data, which was probably like 7 years ago, I think it was like really down. It was like only in the tens of thousands or something. And then non-theistic Satanism, an atheist could be a part of that. And there are that, and I think that for some atheists, I'm just giving you my vibe. I haven't looked at numbers on this, but it seems like some of the atheists that I've known for a few years or at least a couple of them are identifying now as Satanists. And so I think it could be that that's something that atheists are.
I mean, but like the non-theistic secular Satanists that just,
the blood atonement, yes, the atonement. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Pritchett.
Yeah, the kind of like that secular Satanism, the non-theistic version.
Non-theistic.
I mean,
but now the point that everyone will want to make in the Christian side of that is to say, okay, but if you look at the things that non-theistic Satanism promotes, the idea is that, like, well, we have these satanic displays, like, what's that guy's name, Sam Smith? Everybody's up in arms about the satanic Jonathan, the satanic.
That's the.
Was that Sam Smith?
The singer guy that was at the
satanic. Everybody, the Christians are going to do
this. That's music from the last 15 years, and I don't believe it exists. So
okay. It's not a terrible move, but the idea is that that's the satanic panic. All the evangelicals are worried about.
No,
that. I'm sure there are, but
that's just a troll.
But yeah, this is and to the extent that someone who is a non-theistic,
I mean,
Satanist
if Slayer wasn't having
that.
Pentagrams, back in the 80s on theirs.
Right.
I mean, come on, we've seen.
But the notion is that some conservatives are pointing out, and that I think is a fair thing to point out, is the principles that Satan champions, if you boil them down, insofar as those are actually promoted in some sense by the Church of Satan, well, then even if you don't believe that Satan exists as an entity or that Christianity is true or that any God exists, you can still underscore the things that the character of Satan underscores. Yeah. And in that way, it's satanic for those of us who believe that it's true.
I mean, we believe that you're operating under that influence and power. So, like I said, our worldview can explain all kinds of things. You don't have to believe it, but for me, it's like, you're still operating within the sphere of Satan's power and domain. So,
all right, what's next, Pritchett?
Well, the short answer was what we said about basically the 5 fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, what's next?
But I did want to say, just my line though is the paleo orthodoxy would be the one Bible, 2 Testaments, 3 creeds, 4 councils, and the consensus of the first 5 centuries, wherever there was one. So,
which is why when I make a response to a video and I say, what you're rejecting is a secondary doctrine that's not required for Christianity, and somebody says, oh, well, that's your version of Christianity. Fair enough. I understand that criticism, but the thing about it is, I'm saying if you're walking away from Christianity because of a secondary doctrine that isn't just like what all Christians everywhere affirm, then I'm defending those things that make up Christianity, right? That make up the mere Christianity, the Orthodox Christianity. And then if you disagree with some secondary doctrine, fine, that doesn't hurt Christianity. So it's not a good reason to walk away from Christianity. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? But people will say to me like, oh yeah, but that's just, you're just saying that your Christianity permits that. Okay, well then don't walk away from Christianity. Come over to my Christianity if mine accounts for that. But I've even told, like I think I said this last week on the show, after a debate, someone says, well, I can't be a Christian because I'm a determinist. And I'm like, well, there are Christian determinists. You don't let that prevent you.
Let me ask you a question before we move on to the next topic, because it's something I've been thinking about. There are a lot of video clips where you'll find some atheist or another will affirm Christianity in the sense that the atheist will say believes it's been an overall net positive for Western civilization or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have anything comparable that you could say about atheism?
That what it's done for the West or whatever, or done for the world?
I mean, I could see an atheist, if an atheist who's not like an axe grinding YouTuber say, How do you view Christianity? Do you view it, neither favorably, none favorably, very favorably, favorably?
Like, at what reasons do I have to be favorable of atheism?
Yeah, I could see an atheist, because we've seen the clips where atheists, talking to N.T. Wright or whoever, that historian guy that everyone talks about that has the same name as the Spider-Man guy. I can't remember.
Tom Holland?
Yeah, is that he's said things to that effect, right?
Said that the Christianity has benefited the West, and really the West is much about our culture is responsible.
So you have atheists like that who say that an atheist like that could say, I view it, if not neither favorably or unfavorably, could say favorably or very favorably. They could answer in the positive or indifferent, right? But I could see some atheists answering that question. Could you answer that question?
Could I say favorable things that have happened because of atheism?
Well, before you say that, if you were asked this question in the poll, how would you put neither? Would you put it unfavorably, very unfavorably, favorably?
Whether I'm favorable to atheism?
Yeah.
I'm unfavorable to atheism. Not the people, right? But the idea. That's what I'm unfavorable towards. But the people, if that's the question, I'm favorable to a lot of the people. I'm favorable to, I think that atheism has served a wonderful purpose of getting Christians to clarify what we're saying, how we argue, those kind of things. Individual atheists have probably benefited the West in great ways. I don't keep track of that sort of thing. But the view itself is the view that everything, the foundation of everything that I stand for is false, or that I have no reason to believe it at the very least.
Right.
So I'm not favorable to that, but favorable to the people, yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know that this poll actually makes that distinction.
It's actually, as you asked me that, it's kind of an important distinction.
Yeah, but it says isms, not ists, right?
Okay.
Like Presbyterianism, Lutheranism, Southern Baptist Convention.
I'm not favorable to it, but I'm a lot more unfavorable to other things on the list, I think. Because it's the same thing like with the whole, James White has said this before, and I think he's right. He talks about okay, you could have like the Satanic Bible, okay? Yeah. Or you could have, or whatever book you want to say. And then you could have like the New World Translation of the JWs.
Yeah.
Well, that, as he put it, is the most dangerous piece of anti-Christian propaganda.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And the reason he says that it's more dangerous is because it takes the truth and it
slightly twists
it at important and planned moments.
Yeah.
So, there are false prophets and things on the list that I'm less favorable toward.
Yeah. Somebody clip that out. We agree with James White about something. Shocker.
I've said that many times. We had a couple of super chats. Let me see what happened to those. Okay. First of all, we have Jim Amberg, Channel Angel.
Channel Angel.
We love you, Jim. You just are incredible, but we love you anyway because of your
incredible attitude. And he doesn't have like something. He's not trying to, I want this said. He just $20 from the Channel Angel. That's all it says. And you got to respect that.
Yeah. Let's see.
But yeah.
Mr. Green celebrates 18 months of channel membership. Satan's been defeated. Satanists, sorry, not sorry.
Amen. That's the kind of, and he didn't have to pay.
Yeah, but pop culture Satanism simply trivializes the reality of the supernatural.
That's a good point.
Has he embraced Reformed theology? Well, neither of us. I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Yeah.
And let's see. Where did we have somebody else? We had somebody else. We had Mr. Green. Maybe that was him, his Channel Angel thing.
Yeah.
Or his channel thing.
Yeah, atheists, I would say, have written, like, I mean, how can you not like a lot of the science fiction writers, Asimov and Clarke and guys like that who...
Isaac and Arthur C.? Isaac Asimov and Arthur C.
Yeah. Arthur C. Yeah. I'd say that there's been a lot of like good cultural contributions from atheists on that.
So Drew says, this is Drew. I was talking about your beard. Well, the thing is, I'm going to tell you something.
He even has, not only does he use like the essential oils for his beard, he also has a comb now that he's been show him the comb. I see it right there. Show him your beard comb.
That's so lowbrow what are we doing here anymore if I'm using a beard comb? I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
I go to a beard specialist.
He's on his way to being because the beard grooming thing, like, for all the rugged whatever that Calvinists and, wearing flannels, even though they've never chopped wood in their life, for all that kind of thing that they're trying, they also are very big into beard grooming.
I think from the tenor of this, because I don't know which Drew it is because it's a Facebook user, I think it's Drew McLeod.
Oh, beautiful chin mane. Scientific contributions from Ron L. Hubbard. I mean,
Ron L. Hubbard understood something very well. Ron Hubbard understood something very well. I knew something didn't sound right there. I'm not.
That's the. He did.
He wrote so prolifically.
Yeah,
he understood that if you want to start a religion, well, he said.
Yeah. We all know the quote.
No, that's not the quote. The quote is, "You need $1 million." Right, or what did he say? You make $1 million.
If you wanted to get rich, sorry.
Yeah, you start a religion, you make $1 million. So I wasn't even thinking of the quote. It just came up. But
I'm trying to think. Battlefield Earth is what I was trying to think of.
But the
answer is no.
It's Drew Beatty. It's not Drew Beatty. But no, I've lost it now. What was I even trying to say?
L. Ron Hubbard
said that you publish, and you can start a religion. And this is the thing. This is true of many of the cult leaders, is just put out stuff. Just put out. And so, of course, I have 9 books out. This is how you do it.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Fiction and nonfiction, too. There you go.
Yeah, but yeah, my fiction is obvious that it's fiction. Well, his is too, I guess. I read over 20 Calvinist books, but I'm not trying to pass off my fiction as a new creation story. That's what I'm trying to say.
There you go.
I read over 20 Calvinist books and still can't grow a beard. Well, there's about 5 jokes that just came to mind right now that I won't use. But
he's got he's carrying the torch for the 1990s, like Ben Affleck, Kevin Smith, skater kid goatee.
Yeah. What are we doing here, Pritchard? Are we having a show?
Yes. Before we move on to the other topic, I do want to say real quick that because Americans still view Christianity favorably, there is still plenty of opportunity for evangelism in a culture that still has a positive view towards Christianity in general, above all other worldviews, right? And that's not to say, because you don't know who the people were that answered this question. Were the majority of them Christian, non-Christian, whatever? We don't know. Did the Southern Baptists say he didn't view like the Lutherans favorably? You don't know how any of this answered. But still, overall, I think what this shows us, though, is that Christianity is still viewed either neutrally or favorably or very favorably, and all that is a positive if you're trying to still speak into this culture and evangelize it, that maybe not on the internet so much, but anywhere else, like in real life, you're probably going to have good conversations and be able to still evangelize this culture. So that's the main takeaway. And then, of course...
Let's see how the poll's doing here.
Yeah. Can you pull that up on the screen? Yeah.
I can. But they can all see it.
15%.
15% are atheists in this poll with 46 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably sounds about right. It's a live stream.
Trinity Radio, the channel that atheists love, right?
15% of our audience.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they love us, though, actually. I know that Kevin loves me.
I know that Kevin
loves us. That
Honestly
Atheist loves me.
Yeah. Why is it me, not us?
I can't speak for you.
Okay. Well, I know that the faithiest atheist.
Jerome Robinson says, what are you talking about, Pritchett? Christians are like 70 to 80% of the population.
Okay, well, yeah, still.
Now, it is important to say that
there's a
I'm
cultural...
I don't see myself as persecuted. No. But I will say this, because someone said a while ago, oh, yeah, so you guys are really persecuted or something. And the thing about it is, there is a big difference between the top-down view of the world, like the institutions and how they see all of these things and how they function with respect to Christians. And that includes, all the media outlets like movies, music, news, everything else. And then I don't. And that's sorry, I got caught up by a question here. Braxton reading Chronicles of the Adonai, the island, and sounds like Julie saw some mystical ruse. She said weird marsupials, but I know the truth.
There's a difference.
I forgot that I said that, but I don't even remember saying that now, but isn't it interesting that years ago, like a few years ago when I wrote this, I didn't say kangaroos. I said weird marsupials. No, what was I just saying that was so great?
Well, the idea, we need to make a distinction between those who culturally identify as Christian in a cultural sense. I don't think it's as high as 80% at all anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There is a difference between extrinsic and intrinsic Christianity.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the point I'm saying is if you want to change a culture, for example, there's a great book on this from Oxford Press by somebody Hunter. His last name is Hunter. Wonder why I remember that. No relation. And it's How to Change the World. I wrote a blog article about it. It's still there on brackcenter.com. But he's talking about how cultures change from the top down. They don't usually change from the bottom up. So that's why, like, whatever you think about the subject, when most middle America didn't believe in particular scientific hypothesis or theories, but they still got taught in all those middle America classrooms, that's partly because the culture's changed from the top down, right? And so even though we always push people to evangelize, and reach your community, and we do need to do that and want that, mass cultural change comes often from the top down. And so as a result of that, there could still be a persecution of a sort, although, again, I'm not saying I'm not feeling persecuted or anything, but there could be a persecution from the top down, even if the bottom up, the bottom is still predominantly Christian or something.
Yeah, and 70%. Of that, I would say that's a cultural Christianity identification, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these people are practicing Christians, right? Of course, I did see something else before we get to the next thing that I thought was interesting. Maybe you'll find.
Is this what's prompted that question, the Spartan theology thing?
That 60 to 70% of the population that claim to actually. Do you think
they're actually Christians?
No.
I mean, some of them.
Yeah. Do I think all of them? No.
Right.
It depends on what you mean. Do you mean like the evangelical born again Christian thing? No. If you just mean cultural identifier, sure.
But it's still the question, of course, is how is the country favorable, and whether none of them are Christians, we're gauging how favorable.
And what's interesting is that because they're all just using sample data, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, you have 70% of 69 to 70% of Americans identifying culturally as Christians, yet only 50% of Americans view it as favorably, right? Mm-hmm. So make that of what you will.
I just don't see people, says Tim the Ancient, I just don't see people in today's society ever truly caring about Christianity as long as it gets between them and their sex lives.
Yeah.
And listen, that's still going to be true about some people, even if it's not true of the atheists that we're interacting with.
Oh, the Frank Turek, you just want to have sex with your girlfriend thing?
Well, right. I mean, I don't know how he claimed to know that about any particular person, but...
Well, he asked the person in the audience, and the audience kind of...
That's definitely true of some people. Still boost your favorable...
But we do have...
Unpopular opinion. I hope to see evangelistic humanism become a thing within my lifetime. I think it kind of already is.
Yeah, it is a thing. It's just, I mean, it's about numbers, right? I mean, that's what we're basically talking about is numbers. So,
Slavic Stris says, and thank you for that, is Christian good fiction series Patreon stream? Do a patron stream.
One of them, I think your first book is.
All the books, I think. If they're not, I'll release them all. They all should be in there.
Oh, well, I know that the first one is, or at least
maybe the other two aren't. I'll put them in there.
I know. I know that you put the first one in. I don't know that you've actually.
Or he might be asking, can we do a Patreon only stream about good Christian fiction? In either case, I'm open to. I will do one. Open to the other.
I mean, Braxton. I mean, he's not going to put his at the top, so he's going to put Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series. I think is his favorite of all time. Right? I mean, far surpassing Narnia.
What are you talking about? That's to see if I'm listening, isn't it? That's to see if I'm listening. Although I bet every one of those is at your house.
Yes.
I don't even have them.
You don't?
No.
Well, then you're not an evangelical. See, I'm even more evangelical than you because we have copies.
You can have that. Kevin, I'm not going to read your second one, but it's there. Anybody can see it. But Catholic sex life restrictions are so much worse than non-Catholic Christians. Well,
I mean, I think that goes into the birth control thing. But then if you know,
well, no, he gives an example.
Oh,
isn't that what they call the rhythm method?
Oh yeah, okay. All right. Well, but given that we have an environment that's still somewhat favorably towards Christianity, or either indifferent or favorable towards Christianity, let's talk about the importance of small groups at your local church. Christians, if you are a Christian, atheists, this is probably where you're going to tune out. But Christians, we were looking at some recent Lifeway research material, or at least I was, and I showed Braxton like 30 seconds before the stream started. But Lifeway did a study on churches seeing new commitments to Christ, and then they talked about small groups in churches, and then they also talked about volunteering, like people in the local church, how much they volunteer inside the church and how much they volunteer to go do community service type activities. And that's an interesting one. But the Lifeway research one, a Lifeway research study finds church growth requires active small groups, focused evangelism, and assimilation of new believers. By Marissa Pastel Sullivan. As churches continue ministry in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, many are finding it increasingly difficult to grow their small groups. However, churches continue to report new commitments and changed lives. So people are still getting saved in churches. There's a chart that shows how that reporting goes. And they say that the average U.S. Protestant church saw 15 new commitments in the past 12 months. But this also is broken down later in the article about church size and whatever. But you can see that 29% say there's one to four, so it's fewer. But as churches have struggled to develop small group attendees, large numbers of new commitments to Christ are becoming less common. In the past 12 months, Protestant churches have seen an average of 15 new commitments to Christ. Churches are likely to say they've seen at least 1 to 4 commitments in the past year, 29%. Around 1 in 5 say they have seen 5 to 9, or 10 to 19, 20% new commitments. Fewer are on the extremes of having no commitments, which is 17%, or 20 or more, which is 13%. Compared to 2010, fewer churches today are seeing at least 20 new commitments to Christ in a year, 20%. So that number's up. That the churches that have big events like where Braxton Hunter comes in and 45 people get saved on that Sunday. Another piece of data from this, though, shows that when new Christians, when they become Christians in a church, they actually stay in that church and they become more involved than other regular attenders. I thought that was interesting. Like a new and that makes me wonder, are the old hat Christians sitting around in these churches, they've just kind of checked out of everything but the Sunday morning, right? They're like, I did the small groups for a while. Or if this is Sunday school, I did that.
Well, it makes sense that your zeal might be heightened when you first become a Christian.
Yeah.
You're ready to hey, I'm ready to do all the things,
Yeah.
So
you know what there needs to be research done on, though? I'm wondering if all of these internet happy apologists and theologians who are like the theology geeks and apologetics geeks, I wonder what their participation in the local church looks like. Has that?
Yeah, I talk with the guys that I'm friends with, and they have a healthy.
They are participating in a small group, or they or lead a small group or whatever.
Well, I don't know about small groups, honestly.
I mean, are we just talking about they attend a local church regularly for a service?
Well, a lot of these guys also make help with resources for their church, like we do, and stuff like that. So, I don't know, but it's a good point about small groups. I don't know.
So what they're arguing is in this article, this Lifeway research, that small group is on the decline, right? So I think it's down from. There's a chart that shows the participation on down in that. If you want to pull that chart up, participation in small group, shrinking percentage of church growers. So this is now. If you go back in time, you and I are old enough. We were alive and adults in 2008. You remember in the mid 2000s the big push to move away from Sunday school to small groups.
Yeah.
Maybe that even goes back even to the late 90s, early 2000s. But that would have been like its peak of the small group movement. What was that, 2006, 2008, something like that? But you can see it's on a downward trend, right? And that correlates to more churches having fewer to no new commitments.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm not saying cause it. I'm saying that correlates with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's interesting because, you know, we hear a lot about evangelism. You're an evangelist. We talk a lot about evangelists. We just talked about revival in the last episode, live stream. We've talked about like evangelistic events. We've had several shows on that. But it's still the case that personal evangelism seems to be the vehicle, and small group or Sunday school classes is the vehicle within that, right? That brings about growth in churches. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to say about smaller churches, like the smallest churches have the fewest like if a church has 50 members or less, the smallest churches have the smallest percentage of people in that small church participating in small groups. So you think that the one thing you would want to do if you were in a small church is to create a small group, right? And try to work out from there and try to push that.
Well, you know, part of it is small groups are more than or different in depending. I mean, there's so many different ways to do a small group, but it's kind of like Sunday school, just not at church in a certain sense. Now, it may not be so rigorously structured so that there is definitely a teacher and they're going to lecture. Maybe you can raise your hand and ask a question or whatever, you know. But a lot of Sunday schools are already like small groups anyway. So it's kind of like just taking Sunday school and moving it out into the community. Well, I'm not surprised. I always thought this back in the day, like when I pastored, we had a Sunday school.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it through the week and not at church, it's easier to get someone to participate that way. Whatever you want to say about whether this is good or not, it's easier to get someone to participate that way if they're already going to be at church, and they know that if they're already going to be at church, everybody else is going to Sunday school. You know.
Yeah.
So the small group thing is difficult. The great thing about it is, you know, you get some people out of the church. People are more willing to go to someone's house. You know, you can make kind of a little party out of it. You can have some chips and drinks or whatever. Maybe you grill out occasionally. Maybe you do other things. But once you're out of the church, man, it's hard to corral these people into small groups.
But I think most people, but I think small group, inviting people to small groups and then from there getting them to the worship service seems to be still the mechanism that this article is pushing towards, and it just needs to be, and I think that's correct because, you know, for most people, I think that the small group, the one area that I think Sunday school works better than small group, I'll say, is for not young in age, but for new parents, because, you know, a lot of parents want to be able to get involved in these small groups, but I've seen at least 3 churches comparable to the size of ours where their smallest group was actually young parents because nobody and this goes back to the volunteer thing that we're going to talk about. Like nobody wanted to volunteer to be the ones who watched a whole bunch of kids on a Tuesday night while all the other new parents.
It's hard enough to get somebody to watch the nursery during the service.
Yeah, amen. Now, I've done it.
Well, I haven't, but I was the pastor, so I felt like I had a reason. I was in the pulpit.
Well, we are at a church now where you could volunteer to do it.
You know, you need to stop.
Right.
Okay.
Braxton here,
Spartan
you
theology
just heard it. Braxton's too good to change diapers in the
They're not looking
country.
for a lot of grown men with beards to keep this. Okay, Spartan theology says that's interesting because my experience was as I studied theology more, it got harder to participate in small groups because of all the disagreements. That's true. That could be.
Well, that could be simply...
In fact, a lot of the guys that end up in our online groups, theology-based groups, not necessarily the apologetics, but those two probably, but the theology geeks, the people that want to argue Calvinism and open theism and all this stuff all the time.
Yeah, they're the ones starting the disagreements in the small groups and being the cancer that destroys the camaraderie. That's what I think.
What I'm saying is they will sometimes, because they study this on their own throughout the week and become obsessed like we do, even if they don't become obsessed, they're just interested in it. They come to know more, at least about particular issues, than some of the people in the class. And so that can lead to a difficult time, you know, I guess. Because you want to be in a group where you can grow and ask questions and all that. But number one, if you feel like you knew more than everyone else in the group, not that that's a good way to think about yourself all the time, but realistically, if you know more theology than the people in this group and we're talking about these theological ideas, you know, I mean.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I shouldn't tell all of the theology geeks to start small groups and be the teacher, because all they're going to do is you're going to become the person who is like the theology police for your small group while simultaneously on Twitter griping about the theology police of some other tribe and theological tribe you oppose, right? I could totally see that happening. So
Gregory Fisher's got small groups at his church.
Yeah.
I think the one they revitalized. Okay, I'm currently trying to get a small groups program off the ground in my humanist congregation. The struggle is real. So here, now you might do this. Well,
invite Christians.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if I want to encourage him, but what we do okay, so here's what we do. Lee Strobel first discussed this when he was back at, what's the name of the church that was up there near Chicago?
Willow Creek.
Willow Creek, yeah. Willowbrook? Willow Creek?
Willow Creek.
Wow. Anyway, he started these small groups there where anybody could come. You could be an atheist. You could ask whatever you wanted. You didn't have, don't worry about offending us. Just be respectful and, that sort of thing. And saw a lot of people come and start asking questions, and some people became Christians and all that. So that's what I did here in town, and you came to that group a few times. I did it for a few years with a college group here, and we had atheists coming in, agnostics, people of other religions, and it worked. I mean, it's kind of cool when you just start out and say, hey, I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes, and then we're just going to ask questions and chat, and that sort of thing. But you can ask whatever you want. If you can say, I don't believe none of that you're saying right now, or I think that's stupid, or whatever. Try to be respectful, but that's fine. You can ask questions.
Yeah, and I always find it, we always talk about, like, the correspondence of atheology to theology, right? Here we have honestly atheists, and he's the ecclesiologist of the atheism, because they're still looking for an ecclesiology. They still want to have some sort of congregation. They still want to, because atheists cannot live without religion. And so they want to have services. They want to have, like, Nietzsche is the eschatological, he's the end times guru for atheism, right? I mean, we always find a counter to every bit of theology among atheists, and here we have ecclesiology right now, right? Mm-hmm. It's congregations and small groups within congregations, and so I don't think honestly atheists would deny that humans have this sort of religious impulse. He just doesn't believe religion.
Yeah, I think a lot of atheists will admit that.
But we do have that sort of impulse for something, more transcendent than just our own personal life. So,
Jordan here says, that's why you need child-integrated worship.
Ooh, that's a can of worms we can open.
Is that like the family church movement? Like, where you don't really have a youth group?
No youth
Everybody
group, no
does
children's
it together.
church, none of that.
Like, you might have a nursery, but the rest of it's...
you just go back to the quiet room. They have like the quiet room.
Oh, the cry room. No, you call it a cry room.
Cry room, or you can, or the changing station or whatever, that you go back there.
I've been surprised how many cry rooms there are currently in churches. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I've been in some cry rooms.
One Life doesn't have one, though.
No, they might have a room where there's a feed or something in there. We did that when I was pastoring.
Yeah. Well, the cry room then kind of...
By the way, for those that don't know, it's a window. The old school way is there's a window at the back of the sanctuary of a church, and there's a room in there with a number of seats and stuff like that, and it looks out on the sanctuary, and there's speakers. So you can sit in there. You don't have to worry if your baby's crying or if a woman wants to nurse or whatever else. It's all there. Right?
Yeah.
Some people might not know that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
When this show first started, like more than 10 years ago, because it was just an audio thing that we released one episode every 6 months for a while. But before you ever came along, I had another guy, Nathan Williams. I bet there's no one in this live stream who was around back then watching us. But you
mean listening?
Listening. But we started as part of our thing. We had segments, and one of our segments was, I forget what we called it, but it was basically, why do churches have that? Like, why stained glass windows? Why steeples on the church?
Yeah.
Why, all these kind of things. And then we talk about it. And I remember when we talked about steeples on the church, the things related to like what that's fertility god and all that kind of thing. There were some Nathan Williams I don't think he wanted us to do that one because it sounded a little like we'd be talking about some stuff that grandmas might not want to hear about, but back in the good old days.
Yeah, kind of like that Josh Butler article that a bunch of people threw a fit over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody would be interested. Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to save it because I tend to
There was a question from, well...
Pritchett, am I confined to push-ups if I want to work my chest without equipment? If no, what else can I do?
Dips. Chest flies with a set of rings or suspension trainer. You can get a sandbag and you can do plank flies where you're in a plank position and you're dragging the sandbag and then you just drag it under your chest. There's all kinds of things you can do. But if you're without equipment, I guess a sandbag counts as equipment, rings and suspension trainer. So
dips. Just stick with dips, right?
Well, dips would require dip bars. Here's the thing.
Go to a playground, man.
Exactly. Look, this idea of like these calisthenic purist body weight, like no equipment whatsoever. Okay, your back is going to be way insufficient. You need at least somewhere to hang from, right? To do. I mean, you always need something more than you need at least somewhere to hang from to do your pull-ups and chin-ups and stuff. So there is no sort of 100% equipmentless workout that is superior than using some equipment. So I think you should always. Why would you want to do exercises without any equipment whatsoever? When a $10 suspension trainer that I reviewed on Theology Geek Fitness, $10 for a very decent suspension trainer at Five Below opens you up to a total body workout. Anyway,
look here. Has anyone been able to not stare at Braxton's beard? I am surprised how hard it is to look away from. You know what's happened? Now, those may not know it, but last week on the long form video, do y'all know I'm doing this basically, is making one long video with a bunch of segments and then cutting them all up as videos and TikToks. Anyway, I decided I would go. So last week I put a little thing that said admittedly weird beard transitionary period because it looked weird. But this week I went and got it shaped up. I've been trying to get some more length on it. And I'm feeling good about it. So I'm going to take William Billy Craig's comment here as a encouragement. He's good at encouraging people.
Yeah. So you put a little bit of extra effort with your beard comb and your clippers and your essential oils and everything else that you probably slap on your face, and it's paying off. All I did last week was shave, and someone said, "Wow, how handsome and young you look." So anyway, I want to get on to the last little bit of that.
Wait, Caleb Garza says, I'm a patron because you go from Wiccans to cry rooms to suspension trainers. That's it, man. That's Trinity Radio right there.
Well, one of us. Well, no, you brought up the cry room. So
I was on the chest press machine when you started talking about chest workouts. Do you really still have something else to say about this? Pritchett?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the volunteering in church and out of church, right? Well, you got to pull it up. Churchgoers are more likely to serve in their the one below it. Yes, that one. This one shocked me. Okay, and of course, again, did you link these in the description?
No, but I will.
Okay, because people need to read this.
And you know why? Just for you all, I made a choice not to link it because if I link it ahead of time, then while people are waiting for the show to start, they look up, well, what is this about? They click the articles, they read them, and they're like, I don't want to hear this.
Right.
So I'm trying to control them and manipulate them like we're known for.
Well, you're very manipulative, right? Just like your altar calls.
Yep. Real manipulated.
Yeah. Yeah. Make provision is bearded again. I don't, whatever.
Hey, MJ, you showed up just the right time. Jonathan's going to talk about people not helping at church.
That's right. And in fact, the smaller the church is, the fewer the people help. Do you believe that?
Yeah, it's 15, what do they call it?
The 80-20 rule?
80-20,
yeah.
but
anyway,
it's less than that.
This is what is interesting. So on average, though, they say like the 42%, the average percentage of adult churchgoers with regular responsibilities at their church, according to the U.S. Protestant pastors, they say about 42% they're doing something, whether it's greeter or whatever else, right? But look at this. This says the average percentage of adult churchgoers who are involved in serving in the community is only 27%. And I didn't pull up the image, but the last paragraph in this Lifeway research thing, and so listen up, all you evangelicals and especially you Southern Baptists. When you look at the percentages even more detailed than that, the mainline Protestant denominations, all the Episcopalians and all them, the ones, they actually blow out evangelicals when it comes to serving in the community, right? They said that 27% on average, right? But let me pull this up real quick because I don't think that I pulled up an image of it for you, but I'm just going to read it from the Lifeway article. Listen to this. Oh man, I just had it and it just went away.
Pritchett is getting ripped and Braxton's beard shining, ... clearly blessed.
Yeah. Listen to this. When it comes to serving in the community, evangelical pastors are less likely than mainline pastors to report a large percentage of the participation. While 15%, of mainline pastors say at least 60%. Right, so the average was 27, but 15% of that average is higher than 60% of adults in their church engaged in community service. Only 9% of evangelicals pastors can say that 60 or higher are serving their communities.
That's terrible, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because it goes back to show about the whole the orthodoxy of the evangelical church versus
but hold on,
versus the social gospel stuff of the mainline Protestant denominations, and yet they put more hands and feet with their
maybe. But look, here's the thing. Honestly, Atheist brings up exactly what I thought. I wonder how they define community in that survey. A congregation is a community, and then of course you have beyond that. At One Life Church, we do city serve all the time, where we get out in the community and fix this, school. Whatever.
Yeah, it didn't say 100% of all evangelicals never do anything to serve their community.
No, but I'm saying when you're serving but it was comparing serving in church versus sharing in your community. How many Christian church-going people serve in church?
42%.
How many serve in the community? And I'm saying serving in church may involve serving in the community, and serving in church is serving in the community.
Yeah, but they made that distinction between
me and honestly atheists are being persnickety is what you're saying.
Right, because that's the very distinction that they made between serving your church congregation and serving your greater community, by which means your city, town, whatever. And I think that evangelicals need to step up their game on that. So my takeaways of this is you have a culture that is still somewhat favorable towards Christianity. Mm-hmm. If not very favorable, more favorable than any other worldview. You have small groups as an engine for new converts, new commitments to Christ, but it's on the decline, right? And then you have people who need to get out in their community more and serve. Mm-hmm. So when I hear people saying that, Christianity is on the decline, this world is, not you already said you're not a martyr, but all these other people who are belly aching about the whole world is persecuting them or whatever. What I take away from both of these is that we have a nation that is, no wonder we saw the Asbury thing. It is ripe for harvest. I think that it's a good time to evangelize, start small groups, invite people over and disciple them. And new converts are more likely than has-been Christians, so to speak, to be active and involved. So those are my thoughts.
Preach it. All right.
So what is that sermon that you always used to give? Get up and do something?
Get up and do something.
You need to give that sermon to these Trinity Radio people.
I probably have in various forms, but Derek says, funding your rebuke of Leighton Flowers for going live while you're live. He knows Fridays are yours. He does. And thank you, Derek. Praise God. Now,
we're not sufficiently anti-Calvinist for Leighton.
The final poll results, before we close out the stream,
is 1 percentage point different from where it was.
Is 16% atheist, 84% Christian. That's better results than what you get with the U.S. at large, isn't it? There's not 16% of America's not atheist, is it?
No.
So
it's still less than 10.
But
it's higher than it used to be.
We're doing what we can to help out the atheist population on our
We
chat.
entertain atheists, I guess. Right.
Atheism, and they might be entertaining angels.
There's a quote for you from Frank Prophecy.
Yep, there sure is.
And you're just going to not put it up there.
I mean, you want to say something about it?
Atheism is
what Pritchett wanted me to put up there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true because all false belief systems.
Thou shalt not stream while thy brother is streaming, 11th commandment.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Southern Baptist 11th commandment about never speak ill of another Southern Baptist. I wonder how much of that mainline serving of the community is political activism. That's a good point. I think I would, if we go by what we actually just see empirically and anecdotally, I would say that's about the overwhelming majority of it, right? But that's anecdotal, and that's just what makes my various feeds and news. That's basically a lot of what it is. But yeah, I think that's probably I don't not believe my eyes. I tend to believe them, and so I would say that's probably a safe bet. Like if you were to assume that, it's probably correct.
Caleb Garza, you have a fantastic profile picture. That just tells me you're a professional.
He's jealous of your beard. Your beard is better than his. That's what that means.
Oh, I'm jealous of his beard?
Yes.
Could be. What streaming platform are you guys using? Ecamm Live. But always have StreamYard as a backup or something. All right, folks, this has been a blast.
Did we miss any?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, there was one at Trinity Radio.
What?
Yeah, Gregory Fisher. Does having a yard sale on the front lawn count? That's
I already
a question.
put that up.
You didn't read it.
You don't pay attention.
Okay. Count for what? Like community service?
For community service.
You know what? Back to tie this in, since somebody else brought up fitness. I didn't bring up fitness, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it back up. You can find a lot of good equipment for fitness for home gyms at yard sales. I think that's a community service.
And I don't know a more spiritual thing to leave on. So, folks, this has been a blast. Have you
God
had
bless
fun
you,
preaching?
too. I agree with you. Atheism is of the devil. I have no problem saying that. I don't know what my co-host
It shouldn't upset the... No, I agree because it won't even upset the atheists because they don't believe in the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, the atheists don't. It'd be a weird atheist who's like a non-natural atheist who believes in Satan but nothing else about the Christian narrative. That'd be a real weird
That would be weird.
situation. I don't think it's real.
There's the one guy in the comment section because you said that.
Yeah.
I believe in Satan.
That's what I've been thinking my whole life. Somebody finally said it.
Satan's not a god, but he's there. He's real. Your God's not. Jesus is a myth, but Satan's true.
And we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.